Chairperson, Budget Committee.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the second supplementary estimates for financial year 2023-2024, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 4th June 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution and Standing Order 243-1, approves an increment of the total current expenditure for financial year 23-24 by Kenya shillings 51 billion 113 million 484,433 in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule. 2, approves a decrease of the total capital expenditure for financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 75 billion 290 billion 535,117 in respect of the vote as contained in the first schedule. 3, approves an overall decrease in the total budget for financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 24 billion 117 million 50,684 shillings in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule. And 5, approves Kenya shillings 23 billion 666 billion. Let me repeat, Honorable Speaker. Number 4, approves Kenya shillings 23 billion 667 million 17,803 spent under Article 223 of the Constitution in respect of the vote outlined in the third schedule. And 5, resolves that the first schedule forms the basis for the introduction of the Supplementary Appropriations Bill 2024. Honorable Speaker, I just wish to highlight a few things to members. And as I do so, I want to thank this House because we have been very busy for the last 2 weeks in what was to be a recess. Honorable Speaker, most of these members have been working long hours to see this process come through, Honorable Speaker. I also want to thank the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee because besides the consideration of Supplementary 2, which we will be currently debating, alongside we've been considering the main estimates for the year 2024-2025, and at the same time, the mediation process in this, with the Senate has been ongoing, and at the same time, consideration of the division of revenue, which necessitated the mediation, Honorable Speaker, and also equalization fund. And therefore, it has been a very, very, very busy period, Honorable Speaker, and I want to thank all the members, and especially those members in the departmental committees for doing a very thorough job. Honorable Speaker, the essence of Supplementary 2, and it is usually said that supplementary budget could be a reference of something that could have been done better. And Honorable Speaker, whereas I agree, I have also noted through the time we've been serving in the Budget and Appropriations Committee that dynamics in the economy necessitate even a supplementary estimate, like the one we are doing at the wee hours of the financial year. And Honorable Speaker, this happens because economies are not static. Economies are dynamic in nature. The variables that then make the economy, Honorable Speaker, they are all moving vehicles, they are more moving targets. And for that reason, Honorable Speaker, these supplementary estimates too is seeking to align the government financials as we close the financial year to be at a tidy state, to be at a level where the revenues that we are projected, which are now almost reality, will now be incorporated as we make the supplementary. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, the essence of this supplementary, the sum, the total sum of it is negative. The total sum of the supplementary 2 is that we are reducing the expenditure by 24 billion. Why are we reducing expenditure, Honorable Speaker? Honorable Speaker, Kenya being a very optimistic country, and being with people who are high achievers, we always set our targets based on our norms. And therefore, our revenue targets, Honorable Speaker, sometime conform with our norm of being optimistic, but then close to the close of the financial year, then we realized we needed to moderate our optimism towards realism, Honorable Speaker. And that is why we are descending from the previous figure by 24 billion in the reality of the fact that the estimates in terms of revenue that we had at the beginning of the year were a bit optimistic. But, Honorable Speaker, that is not to say that we are not performing in terms of revenue. We are performing as a country with a double-digit growth in revenue, only that we projected to correct much more, and therefore we had overstretched our targets. Honorable Speaker, there are some few areas, even as we tidy up the financials, that we have been working on. One, Honorable Speaker, is the area of CFS. Members, if you check in the order paper that we have, you realize that one of the areas that is having a reduction is the Consolidated Fund Services, Honorable Speaker. And if members remember in Supplementary 1, it is the same area that actually had an increment. Why CFS? Honorable Speaker, by the time we were considering Supplementary 1, Kenya shillings to the USD was going to close to 180 Kenya shillings to the greenback. Honorable Speaker, in regards to the other currencies, Kenya was decimated. But in the current situation, Honorable Speaker, in the consideration of estimates 2, Supplementary 2, Honorable Speaker, Kenya shillings to the greenback is just around 130 shillings. And the interest rates also, globally and locally, are beginning to respond to the macro improvement in the macro parameters. And in that respect, CFS forms the huge bulk of, interest rates forms the huge bulk of CFS. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it was important that we align the current realities of the payment of interest rates in regards to the current dynamics, which is an appreciation in the Kenya shillings and also other favorable dynamics in the money market, and especially in terms of the exchange rate. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it was important that we make this Supplementary 2 so that our payment of interest rates is taking care of the gain in terms of our local currency and the other dynamics around interest rates. But even having said that, Honorable Speaker, there are also some other sectors that we have deemed are important for enhancement, even as we come to the close of the financial year. Honorable Speaker, one of those areas is the education, where in this Supplementary 2, higher education is actually gaining 4 billion shillings. But, Honorable Speaker, this is majorly appropriations in aid, because our universities have been able to collect much more A&A than was projected at the beginning of the financial year. And, Honorable Speaker, that's something we may actually need a discussion, because every time we are in a budget cycle, even like now, we see there is a lot of incentive for the MDAs to budget for A&A that is much less than what they usually collect. Honorable Speaker, possibly that is an area that we may also need to talk about, though we have put it in our recommendations, Honorable Speaker, and especially for the main budget. Honorable Speaker, another area that has had increment is the security sector. And, Honorable Speaker, this is based on the realities of our country. Honorable Speaker, we have been able to add a little more money to the police service, National Police Service, and also all the other agencies insofar as security is concerned, because it is important that we capacitate them even as we close the year, and especially to take care of things that have already been spent under Article 223. The other thing that is important for members to note, in this Supplementary 2, we have added Kenya shillings 4 billion in terms of fertilizer subsidy, because, Honorable Speaker, agriculture is the backbone of our country. However much we are making policies to move towards having agriculture account for much less in terms of GDP, the reality is that we are still there. The reality is that Kenya is more agrarian than industrial. And in that respect, Honorable Speaker, the program that we've been running in terms of fertilizer subsidy, we have seen a lot of results in the previous months, Honorable Speaker, and therefore it was important, even as we move through seasons, that we have enough fertilizer for the farmers so that, Honorable Speaker, we capacitate them to produce more and also make agriculture a favorable and profitable business, and especially by subsidizing inputs. Honorable Speaker, there were some areas that were left out in the last budget cycle insofar as paying sugarcane farmers is concerned, and especially those who have supplied sugarcane in public sugar factories, Honorable Speaker. We have also input that balance in this supplementary so that the sugar farmers of this country can get their dues, Honorable Speaker, and especially the arrears that are due to them. Honorable Speaker, maybe there are two so that other members can also take a point, can also get a chance. Honorable Speaker, in Kenya, when it rains, we get blessings in many respects. But also in terms of the recent rains, Honorable Speaker, we have had to expend public resources in terms of mitigation of the damage caused by the El Nino. And I want to assure honorable members that we have also incorporated the expenditure, both at Article 223 and the requirements for the remaining part of the financial year in these supplementary estimates, Honorable Speaker, so that we can be able to support those who were the victims of the floods. And in that, Honorable Speaker, I also want to make it very clear that the Budget and Appropriations Committee in this House, our proposal is that because some of the people who were victims of these calamities, their livelihoods were destroyed. Honorable Speaker, I got a chance to go to Naivasha, where we got a very massive landslide and floods, Honorable Speaker. I also went to Mathioya in Muranga, where the people suffered the same. I have also been to Tana River, Honorable Speaker, and saw the kind of havoc that the victims of these floods and excessive rains are going through. Our proposal, Honorable Speaker, in terms of also allocation, is that besides the government giving food ratios to those who are affected, that the government must move forward, Honorable Speaker, and get these people resettled to other more favorable land, Honorable Speaker. A place like Naivasha, where there was a landslide, those families can no longer go back to those areas. And Honorable Speaker, it behoves of the government to assist its people at those kind of situations. And that is why, in consultation with the executive, Honorable Speaker, we have been able to provision monies to be used for the resettlement of the people who are affected by the floods and the excessive rains, Honorable Speaker, so that they can get comfort by not being resettled back in areas that are impossible to live in, Honorable Speaker. The other issue is that when we get rains, Kenya being practicing agriculture that is rain-fed, Honorable Speaker, also, our livestock also get what they need to produce more milk. And therefore, we usually have a glut and overproduction in terms of milk. And that is the reason why we have given UKCC some resources for mopping up of milk during this time of overproduction. And we have given them money in two ways. One, for mopping out of the excess raw milk, but also number two, money for modernization of their factories so that they can start producing powdered milk effectively and in a manner that is cost effective. The current machinery that they have, Honorable Speaker, and the current technology they deploy in terms of making powdered milk is not efficient. It therefore ends up producing milk that then becomes uncompetitive comparative to other milk-producing countries, Honorable Speaker. And we have done that because we know that we need to support our milk farmers, as we need to support our sugar farmers, as we need to support our coffee farmers, our tea farmers, and that is reflected in the estimates. Honorable Speaker, maybe lastly, Parliament, many times people confuse Parliament with members of Parliament. Parliament is an institution. and Parliament is the cornerstone of democracy. Honorable Speaker, in terms of the rule of a modern state, rule of law is important, democracy is important, but also an efficient bureaucracy is important. And in that respect, Honorable Speaker, looking at Parliament, there has been arrears for the drivers and bodyguards who work here in Parliament, Honorable Speaker. From January, they have not been able to get their dues. Honorable Speaker, I want to confirm that you have put in enough resources to pay the drivers and bodyguards of these members, Honorable Speaker. Their arrears from January to date, Honorable Speaker. And in that respect, I request the National Treasury that they expedite in releasing the exchequer that we have added for the arrears of the bodyguards and drivers, because these are people who have families they need to take care of. They have needs, Honorable Speaker, and the more the reason, just like any other civil servant, we were able to put in the arrears for the bodyguards and drivers so that they get their due arrears from January to date so that they can go about their business in an efficient manner. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, I now wish to request the Honorable Mary Emase I beg to move, Honorable Speaker, having given those points, having said that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and request the Honorable Majority Leader to second.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And allow me, Honorable Speaker, first to thank our Chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the members of our Budget and Appropriations Committee, all our chairs for the very good work that they have done over the working recess. You realize, Honorable Speaker, as some of us had time to retreat to our constituencies, many of our departmental committee members, their chairs, and those members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Finance Committee have had a very busy working recess as they considered both the supplementary budget and the annual estimates and the ongoing finance bill engagements over the recess period. And I take this opportunity to thank them for the great work that they have done. And Honorable Speaker, as I second, I want to reemphasize the need, Honorable Speaker, for the National Treasury to ensure that these supplementary budgets, as we have emphasized before, and the Honorable John Buddy, who is here and is a ranking member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, will tell you that over the years, this House has called on the National Treasury to limit supplementary budgets to at least one supplementary budget within a financial year, so that whatever you plan from your BPS right to the annual estimates, you will only revise it once. Otherwise, the business of having to do budgetary revisions twice, thrice in a year is not very good budgetary practice. And it speaks volumes to the level of preparedness that we have when we are preparing our budgets, Honorable Speaker, and also, in a way, creates uncertainty with the implementing agencies in government as to whether you will have adequate resources to implement all the programs that have been budgeted for you within a certain financial year, Honorable Speaker, since you do not know whether that money is subject to review. And appreciating, Honorable Speaker, the challenges that we've had with liquidity, or rather with the raising of revenues in the country, it is only fair that the National Treasury and those who are planning do so with a lot of prudence to ensure that the revenues we project are as realistic as possible, as close to what the reality is as possible, Honorable Speaker. And we must also take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to call on the Kenya Revenue Authority to pull up their socks, Honorable Speaker, to make sure that we are collecting adequate revenues to ensure that we do not keep revising our budgets through these supplementary budgets. Honorable Speaker, let me also note some good progress. As members will note, we have spoken, Honorable Speaker, at length about how we budget, how transparent our budgeting process is. And I must commend the Budget and Appropriations Committee because this time round, they have been very transparent in attaching the schedule. Honorable Speaker, the schedules that you members will find attached from page 757, or rather the first, all the way from the first to the fourth schedule, Honorable Speaker, including the changes that have been made. And Honorable Speaker, this is very good because it allows members to interrogate what are the changes that have been made by the Budget and Appropriations Committee, so that we avoid the temptation that I've always seen over the years to blame the Budget and Appropriations Committee members that they have reallocated money from here to there without the knowledge of the House. I have seen also members accusing each other. And Honorable Speaker, because I have been part of those members who have been on the receiving end. I saw the member for Yatta the other day ignorantly speaking on TV, saying how much money that was allocated to Kiambu County and was all diverted to Kikuyu constituency. And I wondered, this is a member who sits in this House, budgets, appropriates, is always in this House. Where was he when that money was being reallocated? Because it is not possible for one member of this House to reallocate resources from one or the other constituency to another. It is not possible. These changes are usually in these schedules, and that's why I thank the Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee because of the disclosures that you are making, so that even as we speak on TV stations, let us not appear on TV to exhibit our ignorance of the budgeting process. And it's good that every new parliament, members of parliament, are taken through the budgeting process of the House. And I think from the schedules I was looking at the induction of this House, we had at least 3.5 hours, an induction program. And I want to encourage the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, please keep educating members, even as you speak to them, as you engage with them, even through the committees, on how the budgeting process is done, Honorable Speaker, so that even as we speak out there, we speak from a point of knowledge and not just speak because we are riding on things that are circulated on social media or what you think will give you popularity in your village by mentioning other people's names, as I saw the member for Yatta mentioning my name on TV. And I forgave him because I knew he has to mention my name to look relevant to his people. Anyway, Honorable Speaker, moving on from these schedules, there are a number of changes, Honorable Speaker, that are critical, as the Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee has mentioned. Issues touching on Article 223, again, Honorable Speaker, we did indicate that Article 223, and it has been the position of this House, Article 223 is only to be used in cases of emergency nature. Honorable Speaker, 223 is not to be used to allocate money to the office of the Leader of Majority for tea, because that is not an emergency. But the emergency that we have faced as a country with the flooding, it is good, Honorable Speaker, that we are seeing more resources going towards mitigation of the issues that came with flooding, right from the monies that are being paid to people who are being moved from riparian reserves within the city and in other areas where people have been asked to move away from rivers and areas where they are prone to flooding and other dangers, Honorable Speaker. And money has been put to ensure that these people are well compensated. I am glad, and I must thank the Ministry of Interior, that for the first time, even as we've seen houses being demolished in Nairobi, all the people who are living in those houses, Honorable Speaker, and I did see a statement from the Ministry of Interior confirming that they have compensated those people to ensure that they are able to relocate and move away from areas that would subject them to dangers of flooding and all the issues we see with climate change, Honorable Speaker. And this is the way to go, so that you do not just tell people move out and they do not know where to go to. And the small stipend of 10,000 shillings that these people are receiving is helping them to be able to move to new houses, most of them because are tenants. And also, let me take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to appeal to all our private developers. Please, you do know the riparian reserves are 30 meters from where the river is. Please let us not encroach on our rivers and the riparian reserves, because when these demolitions come, you also lose, as much as many of them may have been warned before. And I pray that the Ministry of Interior, and I was asking the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, but he has promised within the next budgeting cycle they will allocate monies to also ensure that the areas they are demolishing houses are not re-encroached again, so that they are fenced off, they plant trees, and those areas remain riparian reserves. Because as we have been told, we will receive higher than normal rainfall over the next 7 years. And therefore, some of these measures are indeed to guard against some of the dangers that we would see. Honorable Speaker, I have also seen changes, Honorable Speaker, in the State Department for higher education. And I have a particular concern, Honorable Speaker. If you go, Honorable Speaker, to the schedules, a change of 250 million that is going to the Open University on recurrent expenditure, and that, I have been informed, is very well justified. But there is also an increase of 250 million shillings of GOK sponsorships to students in private universities. This, Honorable Speaker, I completely disagree with, and we should be engaging. I was just engaging with the chair of the Education Committee to see indication, because remember, we have changed the funding model of university students and how they are sponsored through government. There was an increase in the annual estimates of 150 million, which was reasonable, considered by the Education Committee and agreed on by the Education Committee. And I see the Budget and Appropriations Committee has had another increment of 250 to total 400 million. And therefore, we'll be engaging with the chair and the chair of education so that tomorrow, as we move to supply, we can make the requisite changes, Honorable Speaker. Considering, Honorable Speaker, that many of our public universities are in dire need. Whether it is Bondo University, whether you go to Southeastern University, whether you go to Tharaka University or Chuka University, whether it is Meru University, all our public universities are in dire need of resources. And I know many of them did engage in very ambitious development projects that many of which are stalled. But, Honorable Speaker, we must also be cognizant as a House to ensure that where we put our resources, they follow the policy that has been set out by government. If government's policy is to move to a new funding system, resources then must be moving towards that new funding system, not away from the new funding system, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, we'll be engaging on that, Honorable Speaker. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, let me say the small changes that are there in a bit of the development expenditures because of the issue of absorption. You know, we only have probably about 3 or 4 weeks before the systems are closed for the new financial year. Honorable Speaker, I do hope that the National Treasury will move with speed to ensure that exchequer releases are also done in time for these MDAs to be able to absorb, especially the development expenditure that is being released at this particular time. Finally, Honorable Speaker, I know there are issues to do with A&A in our MDAs, and I was hoping, Honorable Speaker, that this being the last supplementary budget, we would also see a good review. But let me also take note that the changes that came with the centralized collection of A&A through the e-citizen platform have in a huge way helped government in making sure that all the A&A that is collected by MDAs is properly accounted for. And I want to encourage the government and the National Treasury to ensure that there is seamless, not connectivity, Honorable Speaker, as they say in the Ministry of Roads, but there is seamless engagement between the National Treasury and all our MDAs to ensure that the transactions have that seamless connectivity from their MDAs to the National Treasury to ensure that every coin that is raised by all our MDAs, because we have seen in the past, Honorable Speaker, the last supplementary budget every year has been used by MDAs to do last-minute rush or the last-minute dash towards procurement, because people hide their A&A and they then move to ensure that they are rushing this last month of the financial year to procure goods and services, some of which, Honorable Speaker, from experience and from those who have been here long enough will tell you, especially those that have served in the Public Accounts Committee and the Public Investments Committees, they will tell you most of the corruption issues in government emanate from things that are done either towards the end of a financial year or in the run-up to a general election. That is where you will find most corruption cases emanating in government and in MDAs. And therefore, hope that the new system of a centralized system of catering for or accounting for A&A through the e-citizen platform will go a long way into ensuring that we curb this vice that has bedeviled our country for long. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, in the interest of time, let me not say much more, but finally, to just again once more thank the Budget and Appropriations Committee and all our chairs. I know it was not easy for many of them to leave their constituencies during the recess, together with the members of this House who are serving in the departmental committees, to consider the supplementary budget together with the annual estimates, but also to take this opportunity to ask the National Treasury that moving forward, maybe from the next financial year, once we are done with the estimates, annual estimates next week, Honorable Speaker, as we have moved this morning on the procedural motions to allow us time to be able to engage on this supplementary budget, DORA, or the Division of Revenue Bill, as mediated. On I know the CARA is also coming, Honorable Speaker. There is also the Equalization Fund appropriation report from the Senate, Honorable Speaker, and the annual estimates. As we finish with those next week and allow the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to come and make his statement next week on Thursday, Honorable Speaker, as was communicated by the Speaker's office yesterday afternoon, we do hope that we will be able to have finalized all this, but also to request the National Treasury, moving forward next year, let us minimize our supplementary budget to at least one in a year. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to second.
Honorable members, before I propose the question, allow me to recognize the presence of Matungulu Boys High School from Kangundo constituency in Machakos County, who are seated in the public gallery. Welcome to the National Assembly. I also wish to recognize our guests who are seated in the Speaker's gallery. The guests actually joined our Catholic members of Parliament for prayers this morning, and they are the Sisters of the Immaculate, Father Lazarus of Tangaza University, Reverend Linda of the Anglican Church. Welcome, and as a Loreto Catholic girl, I welcome you personally. And on behalf of the National Assembly, welcome. Thank you. Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the second supplementary estimates for the financial year 2023-2024, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 4th June 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 2023 of the Constitution and Standing Order 243, 1. Approves an increment of the total current expenditure for the financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 51 trillion, is it? Billion, 113,483,000 in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule. 2. Approves a decrease of the total capital expenditure for the financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 75,290,535,117,000 in respect of the votes contained in the first schedule. 3. Approves an overall decrease in the total budget of the financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 24,177,050,684 in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule, and approves for Kenya shillings 23,667,017,803 spent under Article 223 of the Constitution in respect of the votes outlined in the third schedule, and 5. Resolves that the first schedule forms the basis of the introduction of the Supplementary Appropriations Bill of 2024. I'll now give an opportunity to members to debate. I'll start with the Honorable Esther Passaris, member for Nairobi County. I've seen you, Honorable Meli. No, I haven't said I'm giving an opportunity. I've simply said I have seen him because he's waving his hand frantically. Yes, there's a difference. Proceed, Honorable Passaris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the supplementary budget as read by the chair of the Budget and Appropriation Committee. As he prepares the budget for the financial year 2024-25, I would like them to really relook at the estimates that they put and to ensure that we don't over budget. Because when we over budget, as we can see, there's been a reduction on capital expenditure of over 73 billion. And the reason why I say they should not over budget is because it's the budgets that informs the finance committee on the monies that they need to raise. And it's ambitious budgets that actually make us look for ways to raise money that sometimes actually pits us against an economy that is struggling and an economy that has been dwindling. I feel that we need to put a lot more money in Article 2 to 3, which will look after the people the citizens that were affected by the floods. We need to really look at how much money we're going to put, especially here in the county of Nairobi. We have seen so many demolitions happening to pave way for the Nairobi River projects, which we commend the government. We need to sort out our dilapidating state of the rivers. We need to safeguard our citizens by reclaiming the riparian land. But that there is a way to do certain things, and we have not followed etiquette ways of doing things. I mean, if we were supposed to actually budget well, we would then be able to put in structures that would make sure that we have a humane face when we're dealing with the citizens who are the citizens of Kenya and look up to us as government to provide for them. I hope that in this supplementary budget, we would also look into the feeding programs for our students, because we have a challenge in not only the public schools, we have a challenge in the community-based schools and in the faith-based schools. We need to start actually touching lives. And when I say touching lives, I don't mean with long-term projects. I mean touching lives with short-term, immediate projects. Right now, we've been pledging to pay the people whose houses we've demolished 10,000 shillings. For me, 10,000 shillings is mediocre. We're thinking that this person whose house we have demolished, we will get 10,000, or because he lives in a slum, he'll be able to find a house, pay a deposit, and then be able to move. What we have not realized is the emotional damage that we have caused that person. Any government, if I were the president of this country, and I really, I want to say this, because if I was the president of this country and I wanted to clear out the riparian land, the first thing I would have done is gone and identified the houses that I'm going to break. Nobody even knows where it's 30 meters, whether it's 30 meters. People are just waking up with X and their houses are demolished. I would have known that here there's 1,000 houses. I would have actually made sure that I know where they are moving to. Not just break the houses and then tell them to move. Then once I've known that these are the people, because right now you've left it to the chiefs and the DCI and the DCCs have no idea whose houses they've broken, who are the genuine beneficiaries. I mean, it's because we're disorderly. And if government is disorderly, then you can expect citizens will be disorderly. If we had identified and we had budgeted, okay, and we had known this number of people in this particular slum are going to be moved. These are their names. This is the money. This is where you're going to be relocated. You've got 7 days. Then we give them money that is sufficient. And for me, we should have looked at not less than 50,000 per family. 10,000 shillings is not enough. We could have actually said we're giving you NHIF cover. You know, there has to be benefits, because those people found themselves in those riparian lands because we as government failed. We failed the citizens. We have approved for them to build. They didn't just wake up and build. And I'm tired of a Kenya where people are buying land, having title deeds, and then getting loans from banks, and then one fine morning we wake up and say, that's an illegality. It's an illegality that we have caused. So how much money are we putting to strengthening the structures of this country? Because our structures are weak. Yesterday I saw Felix Kosgei on TV saying that the government is going to be zero tolerant on corruption. There is no way you're going to have zero tolerance on corruption if you have not given corruption, the entities that fight corruption, money. Have we given them enough money so that they can fight corruption? I really want to see, even within that supplementary, because nothing is cast on stone, that you provide more money for the citizens that we have aggrieved. We need more food for the citizens that we have aggrieved. And I'm tired of people looking at Nairobi and thinking Nairobi is a rich county. Nairobi is not a rich county because of failures of devolution through corruption. So we need to actually make sure that we actually have an equalization fund for Nairobi. Because as long as all those counties that are getting money are failing, everybody ends up coming for greener pastures in Nairobi. Nairobi is over-congested. And as I stand here, I support fully, and I hope that the budget can consider this, 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. We need to make sure that we appropriate budgets that way. We need to make sure that every citizen, and this will actually improve our democracy, because when we say 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, people will take voting seriously. People will ensure that they register as voters. Because right now we have voter apathy. 8 million people did not vote. Why? Because they have no confidence in government. But when we take resources to the places that are needed, how can you give Kasarani, which has over 300,000 people, the same resources as you give us a constituency with 11,000 people? We are failing. So as we budget, let us budget according to our pockets. As we then budget according to our pockets, then we actually look for ways to raise money. And as we look for ways to raise money, okay, let's also remember that we owe a lot of people. I want to know that budgets and appropriation budget that we have right now, the supplementary. Have we made sure that we're going to pay some pending bills? We have actually made our citizens very, very poor because we're not paying pending bills. So, you know, as a government, let me tell you, when I was looking at the South African elections and I saw how the DA party got so many votes, I'll tell you, there will come a time that the DA party will rule South Africa. And there will come a time that an independent candidate will be the president of this country. Because at the end of the day, people are getting poorer and poorer. No matter what we do, how are we going to change that? It starts with budgeting, and we have to have a human touch. Government might be a building, but the building is run by humans. And if we are leaders and we go out and ask for votes, let us start touching lives. Let us start saving lives. Let us start empowering and enriching our citizens. We need to do that. And if it's tightening the belt, let's even start with Parliament tightening its belt. I'm for every entity that needs to tighten its belt so that the citizens of this country can be enriched and empowered. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to the budget. I know many people have spoken, many of the members have spoken, and in all of it, members are actually supporting this particular motion. But I want to give a challenge to members of Parliament. In as much as we have the power to budget and appropriate monies to the various state departments, we also must take responsibility for ensuring that we are able to support the Kenya Revenue Authority, to raise the resources to be able to ensure that we have the money to appropriate. And I want to give a few examples. And I think Honorable Dindi Nyoro, Chairperson for Budget, I also want to ask Honorable Badi, as Chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, you have a responsibility to ensure that you not only take care of the resources that we have appropriated by ensuring that we don't lose the monies through corruption, or misappropriation, or carelessness, or incompetence by public officers. And I want to give you a few examples as we appropriate. I know you have appropriated to the judiciary, for example. As we speak, Honorable Badi, the judiciary was appropriated money by this parliament many, many years ago to be able to rent a building called Elgon Place at Upper Hill. They refurbished the building at great cost to the exchequer. But they never occupied the building at all, ostensibly because they said there was radiation, even though the Communications Commission of Kenya confirmed that there was no radiation at that time. NEMA confirmed there was no radiation. In fact, the Kadhi Court is housed at the same place. So how do you appropriate more money for courthouses to the same judiciary that has wasted money for 10 years to this day? So it is your responsibility as the Public Accounts Committee to ensure that as we appropriate money under budget, we ensure that we are also not wasting the same money. And if there is a State Department that has wasted money, they should not be appropriated more money. You remember very well, there was the Judicial Performance Improvement Program that was funded by the World Bank, the highest amount ever given to a single department in the history of World Bank. I signed it myself when I was Chief Registrar. To this day, they abandoned all the buildings that were supposed to be built under that money. Why are you appropriating money to state departments that have wasted money? And that matter has come before your committee. I also want to ask, on the issues of collecting revenue, the Kenya Revenue Authority needs our support as Parliament. For example, we have a big challenge in this country where we have what they call consolidators, where you bring different types of goods in one container. That is where we lose revenue. Actually, some of the richest people in Kenya have made money from evading tax. And when this matter we tried as Parliament to ensure that we say that consolidation is for logistic purposes, not for tax collection purposes. What happened in that, wherever certain communities began to say, oh, you're attacking our people, they're going to lose revenue, you're attacking the business of our community. So it became a community issue, it became a tribal issue. So what did we do? We rendered Kenya Revenue Authority impotent. They are not able to correct the revenue. And just to tell you how we lose money under this consolidator system, for example, if I carry a backpack of iPhones into the airport, that is 1.5 million shillings of tax in that backpack. How much more is there in a 20-foot container and a 40-foot container? So as Parliament, we are busy appropriating money, but we are not supporting the Kenya Revenue Authority to raise those resources. We know that many of you, when you want to import something, you bring it through Isili, right? How much tax are you paying? How is it that they can deliver a car part to you at 15,000 shillings? So you actually see economies and certain parts of this country have been built on evading tax. So we must begin to ask ourselves the hard questions as we talk about tax. Another issue that I'd like to raise is, and I'm asking the PIC, the Public Accounts Committee, because we seem to think the budget process is a process of the Budget Committee. It's not. It is your responsibility, Honorable Badi. Because, for example, when I'm importing a vehicle into this country, I usually insure it. And if my vehicle is worth 4 million shillings, I will insure it for the value of 4 million shillings. And usually, we are required to use international insurance companies. But when we declare the value of that motor vehicle, I say it's 1 million shillings. So how much tax are we losing there? So one of the appeals I'll be asking members of Parliament, we must begin to make it compulsory that if you are insuring your imported goods, you insure with local insurers. That way, Kenya Revenue Authority can say, but you insured it for 4 million, and now you're telling me the value is 1 million. When you read that, we will begin to collect revenue. This country is capable of raising 1 trillion shillings just by correcting those 2 items that I have given. And I have very many, but there's no time to say that. If you look at the issue of ethanol, which is causing a lot of challenges with illicit brew in this country, the tax on a liter of ethanol is about 350 shillings, or maybe 320, I'm told. But in Tanzania, it's 40 shillings. In Uganda, it's 60 shillings. So what is happening? We are importing the ethanol into the country, but not into the country, but directly to either Uganda or Tanzania, and then smuggling it into Kenya. If we don't agree as the East African community to have one tax regime so that we don't have that issue, then we'll continue to lose revenue. So as we discuss the budget, can we please focus on also revenue collection? We must also learn that it's our responsibility as this House to protect the Commissioner General of KRA, so that every time there are proposals, and it has happened over the years, there are proposals to try and collect more revenue, then we move into our tribal cocoons, because you'll hear the people in Isili saying, oh, unamaliza watu yetu, you're finishing our people. Then one point, the people in Kirinyaga Road start saying, oh, our business people from our community, from Central, are being finished. I even remember it was shocking. So a few years ago, in the last parliament, some people came to see me and they said, please help us. I said, what's the problem? They said, unajua sisi watu wa counterfeit tunamalizwa. Then I said, you're actually admitting that you want support to be able to continue with an illegal trade. So yes, as parliament, we must begin to support revenue collection in as much as we so jealously guard our mandate to appropriate budget. Thank you. And I have much more to say, but I know I want to give opportunities to other members of parliament to contribute to this. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the chance.
Honorable members, join me in welcoming students from Moi Girls Senior High School, Kajedo East Constituency, Kajedo County. Also join me in welcoming students from St. Monica Munyaka Girls Secondary School of Kieni Constituency, Nyeri, and students from Gaitu Secondary School, St. Olimenti, Meru County. They are all welcome to follow proceedings this morning. This chance now goes to the Honorable Member for Tharaka, Honorable Gitonga Murugara.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, just before I make my representations...
What's out of order, Honorable Mbadi? Honorable Murugara, just take your seat.
Yes.
It's the Honorable Gikari. What's out of order?
Honorable Speaker, I do understand that we have already started the debate, a very important debate on the supplementary budget. But Honorable Speaker, I want to request you to, for standing order number 1, that you allow us some 5 minutes. Of course, the only person may be Honorable John Bade, because I know we benefit so much from his contribution after he's done. Maybe you could allow us, Honorable Speaker, maybe some 5 minutes for every member, so that we can be able to contribute towards this very important,
that is all in order,
forgetting.
Thank you so much. That's all in order, but you know the drill.
Yes, I do.
Honorable Speaker, you and I have been here since March 28,
I understand.
2013. You and I.
I just taken some pills.
Take your seat. Take your seat. Take your seat, Honorable Gikaria. You know what you have done earlier. This would have been done at the beginning of this. But I want to request members that when you give you a chance, to be fair to other members, try to use as little time as possible so that as many members as possible can contribute. The Honorable Murugara.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I stand, I'm also in agreement that we should actually take 5 minutes, but we are not bound by any rules because we need to start with that. I'll implore members and implore myself also to take 5 minutes, make a contribution so that as many members as possible can speak to this very important motion. May I begin by thanking the Budget Committee and the chairmanship of Honorable Ndidi Nyoro. They have done a fantastic job. I appeared before them. They were really grueling. They grilled us. They asked many questions we were able to answer. And this is how this report has been made. Mr. Speaker, sir, the net effect of what we are doing is to reduce the budget allocations, and especially the budget on expenditure. And this is purely because we've not been able to attain the targets that were in the original budget. And this is the right thing to do, simply because we cannot borrow all the time so as to bridge up gaps in our budget. Therefore, sometimes we have to bite the bullet and go to reduce what we had budgeted for so that we are able to actually live within our means. We are not being overambitious. It is perfectly in order for a country to be ambitious, but if that ambition is not attained, then you make a tactical retreat by saying, I cannot attain this, let me make a reduction, and we move on. There are gains we are making in terms of our local currency, which is actually appreciating, and as a trade country, we should make use of this so that we are able to trade well, and especially in terms of imports, which are benefiting from these local currency gains. As we move on to even do the budget now, we must think of civil servants, including police officers, who are actually craving for salary increases because they're saying they're living in very poor conditions and their salaries are very poor. We must look into this as we look into the fertilizer subsidy. We have actually spoken a lot about the fertilizer subsidy, and we are informed that the country, due to the long rains, which are actually very good, we are going to realize the fruits of the subsidy we have given for fertilizer. But we must again caution the criminals and the crooks out there who are finding an opportunity to exploit this subsidy so that they do not go on to do crooked things to try and sabotage such a noble idea on subsidy, on production, which is what our country is banking on. We have spoken about Article 223 of our Constitution, which allows the government to spend money on emergency without approval of Parliament. This is extremely important, and the government must stand warned that the only money to be spent under Article 223 is on emergencies. We've spoken about the emergencies of El Nino, the rains that we've been experiencing, the damage we have seen on our roads, on those who live near riverbanks, flooding and water view. And if any money has been spent on this, this is justified. We must speak for it. We must, as Parliament, approve that Article 223 does come in, and the government was right to make use of that article to spend money on the emergencies that we have experienced. There are demolitions that are going on, and every member of Parliament, especially from Nairobi, is speaking passionately about it on riparian sections, those who live within the reserved areas. However, again, we must repeat, the government must be cautious. These are human beings. They must be treated with the utmost dignity. We even have entities that have old titles in respect of lands that neighbor riparian sections. The net effect is that we cannot have any challenge to those titles, and we must trend with caution. And finally, we've spoken about universities, and I must point out about my two universities, Tharaka University and Chuka University. These are in dire need of money. We must allocate money, even if it's not in the supplementary, in the main budget. Universities must be taken care of so that we are able to educate our children. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Hey, give him the microphone. Yes.
The member for Tharaka, well done. Just now goes the member for Dagoretti North, Honorable Lachi. I hope you do the same.
Yes, I will, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support and to appreciate our Chair of Budget and the team for, first of all, appreciating that the challenges we are facing, we have to, all of us, stand in the gap, and more importantly, to ensure, yes, we reduce the budgets. But, Mr. Speaker, when you look at the whole budget that we are reducing, we have to also ask ourselves, that we are reducing so much from the social side and leaving more on the defense side. And more importantly, that is where our people are suffering. That you find it's in the social sectors, it's in education, it's in health, that we need to increase resources so that we see. Yes, I'll appreciate we have given our community health workers, our promoters. I will appreciate we are looking at KMTC, but also in our House of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. I think going forward, we have to ask ourselves, how many KMTCs do we have now? Can we try and now start working together so that students can just go across than still building new ones? Because those are some of the things, if we want to tighten our belt, then we have to tighten our belt in even building new schools. Instead of building new schools, why can't we look at the schools that we have and improve the infrastructure of those schools and see how children can go to those schools than every one of us wanting to build a complete new school? Yet we are saying we want to really work together. We want to ensure, because some of the schools you find now, you have 100 students, and you have a whole school, and you'll still need to maintain those schools to be better schools. And so, Mr. Speaker, today, even as we speak, and I want to speak for Nairobi, that indeed I know we have crisis of classrooms, we have all these challenges that are facing us. But for us, we also want to see that indeed we are improving academically. We have, yes, huge numbers of students in our schools, 5,000. And so even if I improve this school, I always know in the next 5 years, I have to look for maintenance. But we also must start to have a moral of ourselves in this house to believe that we were given by Kenyans the opportunity and the privilege to do budgets for them. We cannot see our people all the time when we're doing finance bill budgets. They have started now feeling agitated. They are all over. They are in crisis. Nobody knows. Any entrepreneur who's a startup cannot understand, how do I start a business and how do I survive in an environment that is not conducive to do business as Kenya. Yet we have decided to have a tariff that is within the East Africa. I will walk to Uganda, I will put in a company, I'll do everything and bring it in this country the same way. So why are we chasing away those people who would have done business in our country? Because our conducive environment for business right now is very hurting. And so for me, as much as we support, we must stand and we must be very courageous as Parliament to now tell the executive, our people here, they cannot go through this. And we have to do it unless we were not elected as the same executive. They were voted in, you were voted in. I have to stand for my people, fight for my people. For Nairobi, as I finalize, Mr. Speaker, there is no way we are going to do what we are doing. Yet we are the same people, starting from the county. They are the ones who will give you all the allocation letters that you need. You find somebody demolished. A whole place in Keleleshwa was on riparian land. Today, again, buildings are back there. So then you come and start hurting others, yet you can't see you are the one who has decided to show Kenyans you can return a building on a riparian land, and so every Kenyan will go on a riparian land. So it's very unfair what we are doing as leaders. And most of us are the ones with shops there, selling clothes and everything, but you want to finish Madare, you want to finish Ruaraka. I don't think it is right. Mr. Speaker, I support, but it is time this House must stand for what we were given by this Constitution. I beg to support.
Thank you. Member for Mungi West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity actually to add the voice on this supplementary budget. And from the onset, I will just take 2 minutes because I know members have got interest on this. Mr. Speaker, I would like to start by thanking the Chair Committee, Mheshimiwa Ndindi Nyoro, for the effort actually together with the members, the way they have done this supplementary budget, based on what we have been experiencing in terms of economic issues in this country, Mr. Speaker. There are some few things we want actually to laud in terms of the higher education actually gaining on this supplementary budget. we have given them life, and we have noted there is increment in that aspect. The other issue, of course, is security, which has gained in terms of the National Police Services, and we are happy that when I read the speech of the President during Mandaraka Day, there is optimism this current financial year, and indeed we have enhanced the fertilizer subsidy, and the sugarcane farmers are also going to gain in this supplementary budget. The issue of victims who experience the El Nino, and we are still experiencing El Nino in some parts of our country. Our people are still gaining on this, and more so, Mr. Speaker, for the welfare and the just government of the people. Our bodyguards and drivers have gained in this supplementary budget. But, Mr. Speaker, I am worried by how we have really reduced the government spending on infrastructure. This country has got so many stored projects, especially in the road sector. And every time we are actually planning, budgeting for this, we put a lot of money and eventually we end up removing. This one's actually reducing certainty of the budget. In the future, we need actually to stop doing the new project and complete the projects we have already estimated in our budget. And we will make sure there are no white elephant projects in our country. Mr. Speaker, the other issue is we are doing supplementary budget just short of days before the end of the financial year. It is good the last supplementary budget be done at least 2 months before the end of the financial year, so that we can actually enable the users of this money to escalate the service to our Kenyans. And with those few remarks, I support. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Teso South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. From the onset, I rise to support the Supplementary Estimates 2 report. Honorable Speaker, this is a very important motion because the Supplementary 2 seeks to provide additional funding to cater for emerging priorities and emergencies. And Honorable Speaker, when I look at the recurrent expenditure, the increase in recurrent expenditure, that 8.71 is in a recurrent. And most of this money is in the State Department for ASAL. It is going directly to mitigating the El Nino rains impacts that we've witnessed across the country. So this is a very important motion. Honorable Speaker, besides addressing the emerging issues and priorities, when we do Supplementary 2, we are also basically adjusting, reviewing, and aligning. For example, when we did the budget performance, we noticed that there's serious underabsorption in some MDAs and institutions. So it is at this point then that we also align the budgetary allocations to budget absorption so that we reflect a true and current position. Honorable Speaker, at this point also we look at A projections. We know that institutions projected to collect certain amounts of money, but when we did again our budget performance for the 2023-2024, we realized that some institutions or MDS have under-collected, others have over-collected, have surpassed their projections. So again, the Supplementary 2 seeks to align and reflect the true figures in terms of what it should be in the estimates. So, Honorable Speaker, also in the increase in recurrent, some of that money, most of it is going to personal emoluments. And this cuts across various MDAs. Some of it is going to medical insurance for civil servants. Some of this money is even going to security operations. Some of this money we've been told is going to cater for allowances for our security and drivers that was in arrears. We did not have sufficient funding. So therefore, this is very critical. But also of concern, Honorable Speaker, are the reductions in development. The reduction in development funds especially is affecting development donor fund, partner funds. And Honorable Speaker, this is of concern because this may increase operational costs. And we are told that this has been attributed by shortfalls in revenue collection. And talking of shortfalls in revenue collection, by April 2024, we had collected 2179.7 B against the projected 24.2.1 B. So what it means therefore going forward as a House, Honorable Speaker, as we even prepare to debate and engage in the estimates, budget estimates for financial year 24-25, as a House we need to focus more on revenue-raising measures and how to further shrink our expenditure. And also we need to look at areas of duplication, areas of overlaps. When we look at water, when we look at agriculture, when we look at health, there is a lot of overlap within the MDS that this House needs to address so that we help to shrink further the expenditure and therefore minimize the deficits. So, Honorable Speaker, I support other locations to school feeding program, fertilizer subsidy, the sugarcane farmers. I think is all applauded, and I want to support the committee for a good job that we did as the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to join colleagues in appreciating this good work and make the following observations, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the budget, the supplementary budget, you realize that a few areas have been taken care of, which are critical and which are important to the Kenyans. The first one is there has been some increase of resources towards infrastructure for schools that was destroyed by floods. That is very good, Honorable Speaker. The only observation I want to make there is, as this money is being allocated, Honorable Speaker, we need to ensure that there is equity in the distribution of the resources, so that these resources, additional resources, are equitably shared, so that all parts of the country which were affected benefit. The second matter, Honorable Speaker, which is critical, is the issue of the pending bills. Pending bills are quite a thorn in the flesh of Kenyans. It's important that the committee has also factored in some resources to clear pending bills. My appeal is that we really look at those Kenyans who have been waiting for long for their bills to be cleared, so that they have their bills paid. And in that case, Honorable Speaker, I think we'll make sure that we don't have people who are just have pending bills as which were incurred last year being paid, and those with the 10 years not being paid, Honorable Speaker. The other issue, Honorable Speaker, is important is political parties have been allocated additional 200 million, which is critical for growth of democracy in this country. The reduction was 800, but now the increase is only 200. We understand matters of exchequer release might be a challenge in terms of if we are to give all the 800. But I think as we move to the future, Honorable Speaker, it is very important that we allocate resources for political parties if we want to grow our democracy. And this is a matter all of us as a House, we need to support so that our political parties become strong. With strong political parties, our democracy in this country will be growing, Honorable Speaker, and I think the country will be doing well politically. The other matter which I need to note, Honorable Speaker, there are also areas of concern. One of that is the reduction of resources towards infrastructure, the roads, Honorable Speaker. With the flooding, Honorable Speaker, which we have just experienced, it's unfortunate that resources for the roads to be reduced. We understand some were donor funded, and on the basis of that resources could not be accessed. But Honorable Speaker, we need now more resources going towards roads as opposed to reducing the resources. So I think in the estimates, we'll factor more resources so that we develop the roads. Honorable Speaker, the other matter, which I think is worth mentioning, is the use of Article 223. Honorable Speaker, we continue to experience abuse of this article. And I think it is important as a country, Honorable Speaker, the executive does what it takes to reduce abuse of this article. If you look at this article, it only allows unplanned activities and emergency. And when you look at it at times, Honorable Speaker, you realize some of the expenditure items don't fall under that category. It's important as a country we take care of this. My last point, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, is the issue of development budget. You know, Honorable Speaker, the more we continue reducing development budget in our supplementary budgets, the more we are not helping the economy to grow. If you look at the totality of what has been reduced in the development budget, it's such a huge figure that we should not be experiencing this. Even if it's the issue of absorption rates, Honorable Speaker, it is important that we use development budget to grow this economy. My last point, Honorable Speaker, is what the Deputy Speaker was saying, and I think it's very important. It is important in this country, Honorable Speaker, we tie the reports of Public Accounts Committee with the reports of the budget, so that those MDAs who have been picked as not using well the public resources through the Public Accounts Committee should not be getting more resources when we are budgeting. I think that has been a gap. We need to see that gap being sorted out by Public Accounts Committee sitting down with the Budget Committee when it comes to the estimates, so that we harmonize those two reports and we only allocate resources to areas where we think we are getting value for money. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Mbadi, you've heard what the Honorable Makali has said, and I know you now chair the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also make my contributions on this motion before us on the supplementary budget 2. And Mr. Speaker, I will start by first saying that I know this is a very difficult time for the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and I want to congratulate the committee, which is led by the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, for scaling the stairs and chewing the gum at the same time. Because this is the time that they not only consider this supplementary budget 2 budget estimate, but also the main budget estimate, alongside other very important bills like the CARA and the DORA bills. But Mr. Speaker, having said that, I want to say the following. One, that even though we say that because of economic realities, that is why we are cutting the budget, the truth of the matter is that we deliberately, as a country, for years now, been not truthful in our budgeting process. I say so because the IMF conditionalities force the government of Kenya to mislead the public on the projected revenue collection. There is no single time as a country that we have been realistic in our revenue collection projections. What we do is we use projected ordinary revenue as a balancing figure. So what we do as a country, we project expenditure. After projecting expenditure, then we decide on how much we will get from external borrowing and domestic borrowing. Then the remaining amount we lump as projected revenue. That is dishonest, and I think IMF also stands accused for participating in this dishonesty and agreeing and allowing the country, the nation Kenya, to misreport their budgets. But having said that, as we say that the budget is being cut by 24 billion, and Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because I know you also sit in the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Yes, we are cutting the budget by 24 billion, but where is the cut? The cut is on development expenditure at 75 billion shillings. And there is an increase in recurrent expenditure of 51 billion shillings. What is the justification for this? When we are cutting development budget, we are simply not growing the economy. And so when we cut budget for this year, we affect the following year. Because the economic growth for the present financial year is supposed to help and influence what is supposed to happen in the economy in the subsequent financial year. So it is not right to always and continuously reduce our development expenditure at the expense of recurrent expenditure. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that this House we are being dishonest. We continue every cycle to complain about misuse of Article 223 of the Constitution. But we do nothing about it. In fact, we help the executive perpetuate this vice. I have proposed a legislation in this House, Mr. Speaker, to streamline and actualize and bring a statute to actualize Article 223 because it is too general. It is a blank check that we give the executive, more particularly Treasury, to misuse. You find that we use Article 223 even to buy land, like we did with Ruaraka land. That can never be an emergency. But when I made this proposal, Mr. Speaker, and it went to the Finance Committee, Treasury appeared before the Finance Committee. They made a complete about turn and somersault. And then now that my bill has been rejected. Mr. Speaker, how on earth would a committee kill a legislation, a bill that is supposed to come to 349 members of parliament to make a determination and a decision on? And then we come here and complain how Article 223 is being misused. It is us who has allowed the executive to misuse this article at will and to actually steal from the people of Kenya and the taxpayers' money. Mr. Speaker, as I wind up, I want to mention that yes, I support allocation of money for flood mitigation and more particularly for reconstruction. The constituency I've represented for 15 years, Mr. Speaker, in this House, and which I continue to live in, and even hope to continue representing in future, Super South, we had the worst disaster that we have ever encountered as a constituency in Sindo. And we lost lives. I hope that this Mzee who lost the 3 children and lost his home, together with the land, because he could not even construct, even burying the 3 children on that land was not possible. Mr. Speaker, I had to use my money to acquire or purchase land for this Mzee. I hope he will be one of the people who will be given money for reconstruction so that he can build, can get land, because I only bought 1 acre for him, Mr. Speaker. This is a Mzee with a family of 10 children. He lost 3 in a day. He now has 7. He still needs to reconstruct his life. So this money should not be taken to some specific areas. It must be taken and given across the country. Mr. Speaker, we are giving money for fertilizer subsidy, but the same is being stolen. This House made a resounding decision on the cabinet secretary. What happened later? A few of us went and sanitized him. Mr. Speaker, these are the things we should not do because the people of Kenya get fatigued with taxation. When their taxes are being misused, they get fatigued. They are not happy. When they see us as criminals who are participating in sanitizing people who are stealing their money. Finally, I have heard and I have listened and I agree and support what the Deputy Speaker said about ensuring that there is prudent use of resources. I support that. But Mr. Speaker, as we call upon Public Accounts Committee to come up and scrutinize these accounts, it should not be lost to this House that we are underfunding a very key institution called the Office of the Auditor General. If you look at the financial reports that we receive from the Office of the Auditor General, there is a rush in compiling those reports. There is a rush in auditing. We need more resources to this office so that they can do forensic and special audits, which are more detailed. In fact, the few special audits that I have before me, Mr. Speaker, before my committee, are so detailed, are so damning in their findings. But if you look at the financial audits, there is nothing. You are expecting Public Accounts Committee to bring damning reports in this House. From where? The Office of the Auditor General is not well resourced to do proper audit. Let us give that office money to do proper audit, come up with special audit, forensic audit, then this committee of mine, Public Accounts Committee, will be able to bring reports that can be used to control and manage corruption in this country. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I support.
Member for Gilgil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this report by the Committee of Budget and Appropriations, led by Honorable Dean Dinyoro. And I've picked a few issues, Mr. Speaker, on the issues that this supplementary is focused on. And number one is education. And I think in basic education, we have had a major problem in terms of the Ministry of Education funding going to the schools, the issue of floods, the emergency response, because what we have seen is that many of these are left to CDF. And don't forget, we budget once a year. So we get sometimes that our proposals have already been approved by the board, have already been allocated to projects, and yet you're supposed to respond to emergency issues. I know schools in my constituency, Mr. Speaker, where we have to redo almost 3 or 4 classrooms for children to be able to attend classes. I've seen toilets that have sunk, and we have tried so much with CDF to do it, but it is not sufficient. It is about time that this is done properly from the ground, and I think the most important people in this process, not just the education officers, but also the NGAO, the national government officers on the ground, from the assistant chiefs, from the wazee wa nyumba kumi, from the chiefs, so that this information is actually budgeted for and money is spread across the country and not just in one region. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, that we need to actually focus on is the issue of overlap and duplication of duties. I know we have allocated some money on El Nino. We have allocated into different state departments. We have done that in the State Department of Roads. If you look at the supplementary, you see the State Department of Public Works, the State Department of Irrigation also has some money. And don't forget, we also have NDMA. So I hope that we'll be able to know what institution, what parastatal, what state department does what. Because if we don't get accountability, Mr. Speaker, as has been said before by other speakers, our problem is not even the collection of money in this country. It is how it is spent. The prudence and actually the accountability of this money, because you allocate El Nino money to different state departments, you allocate to NDMA, the county has another budget, you hear 2% of their budget goes to emergency. We also have some money, 2% from CDF going to emergency. There has to be a synergy way of getting to know what exactly has been done and how we can be able to track this. But more important, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the oversight and overlap of mandate, especially even in Parliament, Mr. Speaker. I don't see the reason why even the CSS in this country will have to scramble to go to the Senate in the morning and come to the National Assembly in the evening, because it was meant to actually increase accountability, Mr. Speaker. You see the Senate focused on the issues that are supposed to be for this House, Mr. Speaker, and yet the counties are struggling with accountability issues. I think we'll have to get to a point, Mr. Speaker, where we are actually clear that the governors should be the ones actually appearing before the Senate and answering the issues of accountability, so that we have the cabinet secretaries appearing before this House. Otherwise, this overlap will keep being a circus, and you'll get a CS even called in a committee in this House, and they'll say they appeared to the Senate on the same issue, Mr. Speaker. And at the end of the day, they know they don't have any mandate in terms of allocation of resources or even any censure motion in the Senate. It cannot go through, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of health, I think we still have a long way to go, and I've seen some of the issues being addressed through the supplementary. I'm hoping through the main budget that many of the issues, especially on the referral hospitals, will be dealt with in terms of the budget, because the idea of having referral hospitals, Mr. Speaker, is that we only take the very major diseases to the referral hospitals. If the health centers and the dispensaries were to be working, and that is what the county government should be focused on, ensure that the dispensaries are working so that the issues of immunization of children is taken to the dispensaries. The issue of antiretroviral ARVs, Mr. Speaker, is taken to the dispensary. The issues of malaria, issues that can be managed at the local level, should not get to the referral hospitals. That way, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to free the referral hospitals to be able to actually attend to the major issues, Mr. Speaker. And I've seen on this supplementary budget that we have even a backup generator, say, for Kenyatta Hospital. And I think most people in this country, right now, health is in a limbo, because SHIF is not very well rolled out. The transition from NHIF to Chief is not very smooth. So we are having very many fundraisers. I don't think there is any member of this parliament who's not having a fundraiser every weekend for a sick person, for a hospital bill, for a body that is held in a mortuary. So we need to get this transition done very well so that we are able to actually ensure that Chief is working. The issue of Linda Mama, Mr. Speaker, you find that we still have a long way because Linda Mama was supposed to actually take care of prenatal, the birth, and prenatal, Mr. Speaker. But right now, it is still at a limbo. We are having mothers struggling in terms of giving birth, and we still have a long way to go. The issue of the university funding, Mr. Speaker, I see there is an increase here, but there is a bigger issue in terms of the funding of the universities. Right now, because many children are supposed to choose their courses, or many young people choose their courses this week and next week, we still have them not sure what is happening in the funding model. So I hope that even as we look at the supplementary, we look at the bigger policy issue through the Committee of the Education to ensure that this is working well. Because as it is right now, it is not. And it is actually causing jitters. It is causing families to actually become destitute, trying to get money, to raise money, to take their children to the university. There is much to say, Mr. Speaker, but I see we also have time constraints, so I'll leave it at that, and I support. Thank you.
The member for Kiambaa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this bill, the supplementary budget. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to congratulate Budget and Appropriation Committee and our chair, led by Honorable Ndende Nyoro, because, we really worked very hard to make sure that this budget and this supplementary has been up to date. Mr. Speaker, there are issues that we were able to address in regards to the supplementary, and where we made it sure that, we have appropriated money to make sure that certain ministries have been able to get some budget allocations to support them, especially on the issue of emergency, Mr. Speaker. And you realized, as our country, we had a situation whereby we were told about the El Nino, and the El Nino came before we could plan for it, and it had to force the Treasury and the ministries concerned to make sure that they have, some emergency money to deal with the El Nino and to deal with the flood, Mr. Speaker. This issue has really affected a lot of people, especially to make sure that our people have blankets, they have places to call home, because all of their homes and areas that probably were affected by this flood, Mr. Speaker, they were not able even to salvage anything as far as those issues are concerned. In my constituency, I have areas that were seriously affected by the flood, Mr. Speaker. We had areas in Mathare that were affected also by this flood. We have areas in Taita Tana River, and therefore it was prudent for us as a committee, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that we budget and we allocate funds for emergency, to make sure that we assist and help our people who are in dire need of this money, Mr. Speaker. We were able to allocate money. We were able to make sure that the concerned ministries, especially even on schools which were destroyed by floods, Mr. Speaker, we appropriated about 450 million to assist these schools so that they can be able to rebuild the schools and make sure that these students and our people are back to schools, Mr. Speaker, without any hindrance, because it was something that was not planned for. We didn't see it coming, but we had to make sure that we plan for the budget, make sure that they have enough resources so that they can rebuild the infrastructure, so that after the El Nino, Mr. Speaker, our students can be able to go back to school and maybe gain knowledge, so that, because we believe in our education system, Mr. Speaker, and we believe that our children are the next leaders of this republic, Mr. Speaker. We allocated about 450 million to make sure we innovate the infrastructure as part of it in this supplementary, Mr. Speaker. We were able also to allocate money for insurance for the policemen, Mr. Speaker. Our policemen have been doing a great job to this Republic of Kenya. And every time we have insecurity issues, we always go to them for assistance. And therefore, it was important for the committee to make sure that we appropriate money for their insurance. They risk their lives, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes when we are fighting with the bandits, when they are making sure that our country is secure, the borders of our nation are also secured, Mr. Speaker. The insecurities within our villages, those are the people we go for and call for their help, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it was important for the committee to make sure we appropriate money, we appropriate the insurance fund, so that these police officers can be insured in case of any emergencies within the line of duty, or probably they are sick. They have a place. They don't have to be thinking about keeping the security of our nation, and at the same time, they are thinking on how they're going to be paying the hospital bills for them and their children, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when the Committee on Security came, we thought it is prudent for us to make sure we appropriate money for their insurance, Mr. Speaker, and to make sure that they have a place, they have a safety net in case of any emergency. You know, Mr. Speaker, when someone has eaten and you have food on the table, the next worrying thing, Mr. Speaker, is anything to do with the health. And therefore, we budgeted that money and we made it sure, and we told even the committee. And also, we want to say it because it was among the policies that we said that every ministry should make sure that the first charge within their budget, Mr. Speaker, is anything to do with the pending bill. We were able to put 300 million for LELEC because in the main budget, we're going to have 50 million per constituency. So we thought it is prudent for us to give them 300 million to start preparing the infrastructure so that when this money comes on board, Mr. Speaker, they are able to, to absorb and to assist us in our constituencies and make sure that the different committees, different constituencies, Mr. Speaker, are able to absorb the money, and they have the infrastructure that is needed for us to be able to help our people, especially on the last mile, on the issues of transformers, on the issue of street rights, Mr. Speaker. We were able to appropriate, Mr. Speaker. And the last one was the food for primary schools, Mr. Speaker. We made it sure that there is money for food for our primary school kids, Mr. Speaker. Because for us to retain our students in schools, it is important for us to appropriate and to make sure they have a budget so that at least when they go to school, some of these kids, they sleep hungry, and they make sure that they go to school because they'll get a plate of food, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we did a good job, and I want to congratulate the Budget and Appropriation Committee. I'm a member there, and I support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Member for Lagos Songa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me begin by saying that I support the appropriations. I support this motion on the supplementary estimates. Honorable Speaker, as I support it, let me highlight the following issues. The first one, Honorable Speaker, is that it is very difficult to make a budget when it is very glaring that the resources that are, the revenue side is not meeting the targets. Honorable Speaker, as we went through this process, we realized that one of the challenges that this country is going to face going forward is the fact that our KRA is not meeting the targets, revenue targets as defined by this House. And Honorable Speaker, this is happening despite this House going through the last Finance Act, and now we are having the current finance bill which we are going through, which has outlined various tax measures which propose to realize more revenues in the end. Honorable Speaker, the reason why this supplementary estimate is before us is because of failure to meet about 250 billion of projected revenues. Honorable Speaker, this is the reality of the matter, and this House needs to be aware that even if we have those ambitious projects which we want to achieve as a country, we will never achieve them if we do not meet the revenue targets. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, that is the first point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make, Honorable Speaker, is that there is the question of increasing recurrent expenditure and reducing development expenditure. Honorable Speaker, all the supplementary budgets that I've gone through, that I've seen since I became a member of this House, they always target to reduce development expenditure, at the same time increasing recurrent expenditure. And tied to that, Honorable Speaker, is the question of something which is now known as exchequer. Honorable Speaker, you are aware that even as we went through these supplementary estimates too, we realized that development expenditure has not happened since the start of this financial year. because of what is called lack of exchequer. Honorable Speaker, if you are going to look at budget implementation, then you realize that the economy will not be able to perform as projected because we are tending to implement development expenditure at the tail end of the year. Honorable Speaker, I was hoping that you listen to me, but the Speaker is distracted. Honorable Speaker, please listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying, Honorable Speaker, that there's a question of exchequer which is affecting development expenditure in this country, so that you realize that the development budget will be implemented towards the tail end of the financial year. And this is going to affect the way the economy is going to perform based on how we project the resources. So I wanted to emphasize, Honorable Speaker, that going forward, as a House, we need to find a way in which we can be able to implement our development projects early enough before the end of the financial year so that we can see real development happening for our people. Honorable Speaker, lastly, there is something called confidential account in many ministries.
Honorable Batandi,
yes.
There's a point of order from the Honorable Masara. Honorable Masara, what's out of order? Oh, no.
Okay.
The Honorable Didimas Barasa.
Honorable Speaker.
What's out of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Looking at the members who have contributed on this motion, they are in support of this motion, and this is a clear indication that the Chair, Budget and Appropriation and his team did a very good job. And it's against this background, Honorable Speaker, that I implore you to invoke Standing Order number 95 so that you can call the mover to reply. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kimilili has on his seat and requested that we ask the mover to reply. Is it the mood of the House that the mover replies? Order. The Honorable Soro, you'll take your seat. This will be decided by yourself as members. And order. The Honorable Soro, take your seat. Members, you know very well that today and tomorrow we are debating almost similar matters. After this particular matter, the one next is the division of revenue bill. Then we'll be followed by the main estimates for next financial year. So those who don't get a chance now, I'm sure can get a chance in the next. But this is your decision to make. So I will therefore put the question that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as one other opinion say aye? Will as one opinion say nay? So the ayes have it. I therefore call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And I want to assure my colleagues that the next motion is actually the same in terms of talking notes. And therefore, when they get a chance, they can utilize the same points on the same two, the next two. That is the mediation report, and in the afternoon, the main budget. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Honourable members, I therefore now put the question. I'm trying to get there. Members, I therefore put the question that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the second supplementary estimate for the financial year 2023-2024, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, the 4th of June 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution and Standing Order 243, Roman 1 approves an increment of the total current expenditure for financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 51,113,484,433 in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule. 2, approves a decrease of the total capital expenditure for financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 75,290,535,117 in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule. And 3, approves an overall decrease in the total budget for financial year 2023-2024 by Kenya shillings 24,177,533,000 50,684 in respect of the votes as contained in the first schedule. And number 4, approve the Kenya shillings 23 billion 667 million 17,803 spent under Article 223 of the Constitution in respect of the votes outlined in the third schedule. And finally, resolves that the first schedule forms the basis for the introduction of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2024. Will as many of the opinion say aye? Will as many of the court of opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Before we go to the next